If I want something to happen, I will do whatever I need to do to make it happen. I heard recently, it might be Kris Jenner, good old Kris. But if someone tells you no, like you're asking the wrong person.
That was Kris Jenner, I think.
Was it Kris Jenner?
I think that was Kris Jenner, yes.
Well, there you go.
Have you ever had a side hustle? A side gig you picked up for fun, or maybe to earn a little extra cash? Maybe you had a lemonade stand as a kid, or like me, were fully immersed in the world of theater and dance, where each experience ignited my passion for the spotlight. As we transition from those early experiences into the professional world, some side gigs evolve into real passions, and sometimes even lasting careers. I've always been so curious about these stories, especially the less conventional journeys that redefine what a career can look like. They remind us that success isn't always a straight path, and that the heart behind our hustle can lead us to unexpected and fulfilling destinations. I genuinely love exploring how other people's passions have shaped their careers. If you're into that too, join me, Layla Palmer, as I chat with a captivating lineup of guests from various industries to uncover how they went from heart to hustle. There's a pretty big stigma in the United States surrounding resume gaps. The Harvard Business Review found that 61% of hiring managers still consider resume gaps to be negative on job applications, bringing into question an applicant's reliability, motivation, and skill level. Because of this, employers and hiring managers often ask, why is there a period of unemployment on your resume? Now, I don't think that's a bad question to ask in an interview, but its answer doesn't paint the full picture. I'm less interested in why someone has a gap in their resume, and I'm more intrigued by the what. What did they do during their period of unemployment to maintain their skills? What did they do to stay on top of industry trends? What did they do to find purpose in their time of freedom? And so on and so forth. Well, those are exactly the questions I had for Christina Thomas, a creative force living in Los Angeles. Like me, she was born and raised in the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Let's learn a bit more about Christina and try to understand how her heart and passions have fueled her career.
Hi, my name's Christina Thomas. I live in Los Angeles with my husband and my rescue dog, Rufus. And I moved here about 12 years ago. And before that, had 17 million different jobs trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And from a very young age, I knew I wanted to work in film in some regard, whether it was acting or producing or directing. And so a lot of the jobs that I have had little steps that have led me to where I am now. There's so much more I want to do as well. So I continue to just take it day by day and try to fulfill all the little dreams I create for myself. So I grew up dancing, and from a very young age, I really loved being on stage and performing. And one story my mom always tells is, as we were all doing like our bows at the end of our performance, everyone left the stage, but I stayed on stage and I kept bowing, and the audience kept clapping. So I just kept bowing, and we all quickly realized I love attention and that this is potentially something I want to do. So what kind of career could I have where I get to perform in some sort of way? So I continued to dance, and that was just something that was so scheduled in my life. And so it came easy to me because I knew I was going to do it 5 days a week after school. And then in high school, I went to a performing arts high school. So it was part of the scheduled day as well. Acting is something that I'd always been interested in. But when it came to like having to say words, I got so scared. And to this day, I kind of have an anxiety with that. I eventually moved to California, and one of the first auditions I had was for this commercial for a local college, and all I had to say was welcome. And like right before it was my turn, I was like, welcome. Well, and I was like literally scared. I was like, how am I going to say it? It's going to sound weird. And I quickly realized that if I was going to keep up that mentality, I would not have a career acting, because you have to say a lot more than just one word. So then I tried to think more about like the behind the scenes, like maybe there's something in film that I still want to do where I'm comfortable. And in college, I got a role as a production office intern for Night Catches Us. And that was a really cool experience. I just loved like being on set and meeting people, even if I'm not the one that's like actively doing the creating in that moment. To be a small part of that is just something that's always been really important in any job that I've had. And I don't know where else I'm going with this, but that was just kind of like my background of how I like grew up dancing, then knew that I wanted to do film in some sense, thought about acting, maybe that wasn't it. And so kind of more went into like the production.
Totally get you losing your train of thought, but you had me hooked in, so you're all good. But it does give a good landscape for how pretty much everything that you've done in your career thus far has been fueled by this desire to create and to be sort of like in the spotlight or on the stage in a sense. Where does that passion for creativity really stem from?
I think it's something that happened when I was younger, but I probably didn't recognize it until I was a little bit older. But I remember being in fourth grade, or maybe it was even younger. And we used to have a 45-minute recess and then a 30-minute recess, which is crazy. But during that time, I got to be so creative. I used to come up with my own songs. I just remember one of my teachers came up to me and she was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm just like writing songs, like singing along." And then I think my parents were just super helpful in like instilling creativity in both my brother and myself. I remember every Easter, my mom would get us art supplies. And in the beginning, I used to be like, okay, like I don't want art supplies anymore. Like I want like a candy basket or something. I don't know. And then as I got older, I started to really love the art supplies and like being able to be in this, like, again, like comforting creative space is just something that I've just always gotten drawn back to.
Christina's journey's been anything but ordinary. Curious about the spark behind her career, I asked her to take us back to those college years for a deeper look and share how life unfolded after she stepped into the world beyond the classroom. You went to a performing arts high school, and then you went to the University of Pennsylvania, so talk a little bit about UPenn. You know, you went to an Ivy League, so clearly, you know, you're smart beyond just the creative realm. But can you talk a little bit about that, what you studied, what your experience was like there?
For sure. So I went to Kappa, which is the Creative and Performing Arts High School in Philadelphia. There was a program, I think it's called Young Scholars, and you could take classes at Penn, but get college credit, and they were free. So I think it was my junior year, I started taking classes at Penn during high school. And then I started to really like Penn. The idea of like going onto this college campus, like being a high school student, I felt cool. People definitely didn't think I was cool. I remember being like, "Do you guys like want to hang out?" And they're like, "It's Halloween weekend." Like,
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, bet. Like, see you next time. But I felt cool. And so that's all that matters. I just really loved Penn. I got to like still be in Philly, be really close to home. I knew I would get a great education, and from the classes that I had already taken, it seemed like the perfect fit for me. So when I started, I really wanted to study urban relations, I think it was, and I did not do well in one of my classes. And I was like, okay, maybe this isn't what is meant for you. And one thing about myself is I'm quick to realize that and to pivot. I'm not going to like not work hard for something. Everything I do, I try to work as hard as I possibly can and put in as much effort as I can. But there are some things that I am not great at. And that was one of them. So I went back to the board and looked at what my major could be. And I went with theater arts. That was the best choice for me because then I got to like start taking performance classes as well as all of the academic classes. I think it was during my junior years when I got the job cheerleading for the Eagles. And that was such a cool experience because this was like, as an adult, like getting paid and something that I had always wanted to do. And it really boosted my confidence. And I think for a while, but like, especially after that, I was like, oh, I'm going to be an actor. Like, I'm going to go to LA. I'm going to walk off that plane and someone's going to be like, you, you're discovered and like, we're going to turn you into a superstar, which like did not happen. But I'm not mad at myself that I had that confidence, and at least I tried it. And I eventually got to be in a movie later in life. If you like look at my IMDb, there's a lot of like trafficked girl number 3, like victim, stuff like that. And then in 2018, I got a speaking role, and then I got another speaking role that year. And I don't know if it's something that I will ever do again, but I think at that time my mind was like really headed in like you're gonna act. But after college, I moved to New York and I got a job at a film distribution company, and that really opened the door even more for the behind the scenes. I had no idea what film distribution was. Now there's all this information out in the world, but like when I was growing up, I was in Philly, like I didn't understand how a movie was made. I didn't understand what an extra did or how you even got the job to be an extra, which is something that I did when I first moved here. I was like, I'm just going to be an extra. And then I was really into this like discovery, like someone's going to find me. Someone out there is looking. They're still looking.
Clearly you've become really good at pivoting. So how have you been able to maintain so many different careers in like a relatively short period of time?
So one thing I will say is there are bits and pieces of almost everything that kind of lend into the other. Once I moved to LA, I needed some sort of job, and I applied for so many jobs without like anyone really knowing who you are or what else you have to bring to the table. They're just seeing resume after resume. So I wasn't really getting anywhere. So I basically called a restaurant, and the woman on the phone was like, I'm so sorry. Like, can you please hold? It's so busy here, blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, great, this is my in. Like, she needs help. And so when she came back, I was like, you need help. I need a job. I need to be a host. And I got the job. And it was actually really cool. So many celebrities came in. One time, Steve Carell came in, and his reservation was under Scott Michael. So it looked like Michael Scott. And Leonardo DiCaprio used to go there, and Tobey Maguire, like all these people. And again, I was like, really like, I'm going to get discovered, which I didn't. But I saw there was an audition for Disneyland. And I was like, I've always wanted to dance for Disney. I know how to dance. Let's just go and see what happens. And I got hired that day to work for Disney 5 days a week, which was so exciting. So I stopped working at the restaurant shortly after, and then I started working at Disney. I worked there for, I think, about 5 years, and I was doing other jobs at the time. I think that's another thing that I do is if there is any free time, I do like to be doing something, just like planting the seeds of something that might turn into something else, which is how I got my next job. So I was dancing at Disney, and I was living in West Hollywood. So it was about almost like 2 to 3 hours in the car every day. And so I was like, I could either like move to Anaheim. I also was like wanting to make more money. So I would audition a lot for pretty much anything, any audition that would have me, I was there. And I auditioned for, I think it was a pilot, and I met the writer. And he had this really small advertising agency. And so he offered me a job, which I think tells you about my acting skills. I did not get that part, but I did get a job. And I stopped working at Disney and I started working for him full time. I think it was like 4 years. But that was a really cool job because it was almost like I went to like a grad school. Like he taught me how to edit. We were doing a lot of like local commercials, and I started writing the commercials, editing the commercials. I was doing the casting. Sometimes I would be in the commercials. I would do a lot of the voiceover. That was really fun. And while I was there, I was approached by this director and writer to help cast a movie that they were doing because they had seen me doing the casting for the local commercials. So then I was like technically still working at the advertising place, but I took off time to work on this film. And so I did the casting. They didn't have anyone for the wardrobe. So I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to try that. I ended up being in the wardrobe department, which was so cool. And then I was going to be on set every day. So I went to the director and the writer and I said, you know, if I'm going to be involved this much, I really would like to have a role as a producer. Like, could I be an associate producer as well? So that's how I got all of those jobs in that one film. And then that film kind of led to like me doing my own film, which was this documentary that I did
So it sounds like you're really good at, number one, networking, because from all of the things that you've just mentioned, going from job to job to job, they all have that sort of connection in between them. And yeah, as we know, being in the creative industries, networking is everything. So it sounds like you're really good at that, but it also sounds like you're really good at just like hustling, like doing what you need to do to pay the bills, to keep yourself happy and motivated. That's a really good set of traits to have. Christina's career is as impressive as it is unconventional, full of successes, but also pauses for life's unexpected twists. Her film, Free Puppies, follows a community of women rescuing dogs across the rural South. But not long after its release in 2022, she was hit with her own challenge, a breast cancer diagnosis. In this segment, we'll get a closer look at her journey from the documentary's inspiration to how this difficult chapter strengthened her creativity and determination.
So my friend Sam had an idea of doing this documentary about rescue dogs, and she had rescued a dog from LA, and it's the cutest dog. Her name's Billy. She is just so sweet and kind and just a beautiful, wonderful dog. And Sam's mom really wanted a dog similar to Billy. And she ended up getting a dog from the South that was put on a transport and came up to Connecticut. And I forget if they were at like a Denny's or they were at some place with like a parking lot. And there were all these people with signs, and this big bus came and all these dogs came off and people got their dogs. And Sam was just kind of like, what is this? Like, I didn't realize this was a thing. And so we started to learn more about like dog transport, and then to go even further, like, why are the dogs being transported? Like, what is happening where they're living that they need to be sent to a different place in the country to get adopted? Long story short, that documentary is about dog transport and these women in this small town fighting to make new laws and to have a bigger conversation about what's going on there. Basically, we just like went to this town in Georgia. We stayed there for a while. We filmed as much as possible. Once we filmed everything, we decided to edit it ourselves, which happened kind of around the pandemic. So it was a lot of time like inside as well. We were reached out to by a few distributors and eventually went with first run features. I think we played in like 20 cities, which was like really cool for us. We had an opening in LA and in New York, and that was in August of 2022. And then in September of 2022, I came back to LA, and I think I had like a panic attack when I was in New York. I ended up like in the ER, and they were like, "You're fine." And I was like, something's not right. I don't know what it is, but I'm not fine. And I just like felt like a really sharp pain in my chest area. And then when I got back to LA, I was doing a self-exam, and I felt a like pretty large lump in my right breast. And I went to my doctor, and he was like, "You don't have any like family history of this. You don't have a BRCA gene or anything like that. Like, I don't think you have breast cancer. I think it's just a lump. Like, I wouldn't be worried about it." But I was very worried about it. And like I said before, no one's going to tell me no. So I went someplace else, and I spoke with a woman there, and she was like, "You know what? This is really serious. You should have this checked out." So in October, I got a mammogram. Then in November, they did a biopsy. And then right before Thanksgiving, I think it was, I was called, and they were like, "You have breast cancer." Then I met with the oncologist, and they were like, "If you want to do IVF before you do chemo, which is like recommended, you have to start tomorrow." Yeah. So did IVF. Then I did 4 rounds of chemo. Then in May of 2023, I had my first surgery, which was a double mastectomy. Now my doctor like won't use the word that I'm in remission, but I'm definitely in like a stable place. Like, I'm not like actively getting treatment anymore for anything.
Yay! What was your working life? What did it look like during this time?
Something that's kind of trickled through all these jobs is just like this side work of doing social media marketing. So whether it's a full-time position for a company, or if it's someone that just needs help with like a small project, I was working a lot doing that. But in the sense of when I needed to take time off, I needed to take time off. Like I couldn't have a job at the time that was a 9-to-5 full forced job, like especially when I was getting chemo. when it got to like radiation time, I had like more energy to work, and I kind of got into this like routine of going into radiation and then working. So still a lot of like the social media marketing. I guess like during this break of not working full time, and then at points like not working, like I just traveled for a really long time, but I felt so creative when I went. There's just something about being in a different space and the different people that you meet, or maybe something that you see that kind of spurs this moment of creativity that then leads into something else. If I can kind of set myself up in a space where like I know I'm not going to be working, I don't want to just lay around and do nothing. I want to still have some things that are inspiring to me, or ways that I can like creatively use my brain.
There's a big stigma around people who take X amount of time off from work. It's just seen as this taboo thing. So it sounds like you really found that balance of what worked for you, what was the best for you and your situation. So I guess my next question is, what advice would you give to listeners who may be in a similar position where they want to take time off of work, or they are taking time off of work, and how can they really capitalize on making that time productive? And then beyond that, when it comes to re-entering the workforce, how can you explain that to like a potential employer or a hiring manager, and, you know, create a positive narrative around having that time off in your resume, instead of making it sound like you were just taking time off to do nothing and sit on the couch and binge TV?
Okay, so I don't know if it was Pocahontas who said this. my quotes are really, really out there. Listen to the rhythm of your heart. Is that Pocahontas?
I have no idea. It might be. I can fact check. Ooh, so close, Christina. It wasn't Pocahontas who said that. It was actually Grandmother Willow, the sentient willow tree from the movie, who said, "Listen with your heart. You will understand."
Well, I feel like Pocahontas said something like that, but it's like a fine line. But there's this space of allowing yourself the time to rest, both physically and mentally, while staying on top of whatever it is that you want to be doing. And that's confusing. And that's not something that I have like 100% figured out. And it's different for every single person. So I think it's important to just kind of like listen to yourself. And if you feel like you need a break, take a break. For me, I feel like a lot of the time it's a mental thing. Like my brain just needs to rest. And then in terms of like an interview and getting back to work when you have a gap in your resume, it can be really difficult. You could be applying for a job, and whoever is doing your interview process is like not someone who has the mindset of wanting to take a rest and like kind of get back to where you are. But I've never let that stop me in an interview process. If there has been a break, I try to talk about things that were important to me during that break. And usually I will do something creative. So I try to like shine light on that and maybe not focus as much on, okay, I didn't work for 6 months, but this is what I was doing during those 6 months while I wasn't working. In any interview I do, I usually try to research whoever is doing the interview as much as possible, see if we have any sort of connection at all with anything in the past, whether we're from the same place or we both love chocolate chip cookies, or it literally could be anything. I remember I did one interview and I think that there was like a bobblehead of maybe like Ben Franklin or something. And like, oh, like I'm from Philly, like blah, blah, blah. I love your bobblehead. And like, maybe they hate their bobblehead, but it like got us to like the next point of the conversation. So I think being confident in yourself, and part of that confidence is knowing when you need to take a break. And then when you're ready to get back, just preparing as much as you can for any sort of interview, because a lot of the times that question will come up. Like, why weren't you working? So just to have an answer that is true to you, and don't sell yourself short. Like maybe you were sitting on the couch for a while and watching movies, but you were also doing research if you wanted to work in movies, because now you've seen a bunch. So I always try to look on the bright side of everything.
Christina is clearly a hard worker with great determination, and a great example that a resume gap doesn't mean you're a less competent worker. I'm really inspired by her journey, but I couldn't get all of her valuable insights in the short time that we had together. So I decided to shoot her some rapid-fire questions. It's time for the career countdown. a segment here on Heart to Hustle that gives us one last look at our guest's journey in a fresh, inspiring way. Through 5 rapid-fire questions, Christina will share the key inspirations, insights, and lessons that have shaped her career. Let's dive into this week's Career Countdown. The first question, or I guess number 5, is name your 5 career superpowers.
Staying positive, organization, creativity, working really hard, like not let anything deter me, and keeping an open mind.
That's a good one. Okay, number 4, name 4 things that inspire you and get you excited to work every day.
I love watching documentaries. I feel like I'm a very visual learner, and anytime I watch a documentary, I usually have this big inspiration of like wanting to create something myself. So that's a huge source. I think traveling, even if it's like just driving somewhere and kind of putting myself in a new environment, traveling is very inspiring, and you meet new people. People are really inspiring. That can be my third. I love talking to people. Everyone has some sort of story, something that they've gone through, and social media can be really scary, but it's also allowed us to like kind of keep in touch with everybody that we've met along the way and meet new people, which can be really exciting. Seeing a performance, like going to a show, I know how much like work goes into putting on this show, and I just get like such a beautiful, like deep feeling in my soul when I see something like that. And it just makes me want to create and to just like keep going.
Okay, number 3. So name 3 of your favorite projects or roles that you've worked on all throughout these years. Top 3. Okay. That's probably a hard one.
A lot of them I feel like are dance related. So obviously cheerleading for the Eagles, that was so cool. I got to dance on the actual field where they play, and you had so many different people in the audience. I got to be in the calendar, like just that whole experience was amazing. I also, another dance thing, I used to work at Sesame Place, and I was originally cast as Telly Monster. I was like in a costume, but then a girl left for some reason, and I got to be like the singer of the show. So I got to like be out of the costume, and like I was like, hey, Big Bird, like where are we going today? So that one was really cool. And then I think like the social media marketing has just been a really cool job because it allows me to be creative just in so many different aspects. Like I can do something as simple as making a post, or I can make a whole campaign. That one has allowed me to take in every little piece of what I've done so far in my life, kind of like as like my own boss in that sense.
For number 2, name 2 people who changed everything. So maybe through advice that they gave you or support through something that you were going through or experiencing. 2 people.
Okay, one is definitely my mom. She's just always been a huge cheerleader and supporter of everything that I've ever done. She's just always worked very hard. She grew up in like a really small town in New York and created this like beautiful life for herself. She also like brought me into the world. So she like created my life and changed my life. And then there was this woman, Pamela, who was the first person I met in a production sense. She was like my boss when I got that internship on Night Catches Us. I think you can be in these situations when you're just starting out and people either like expect you to know everything or they're not really like giving you time to learn everything. And she really went above and beyond to make sure that I was like comfortable doing what I was doing, but like also in a sense that I was like eager to learn. So she's always been like a huge inspiration to me.
One last question. What's the one leap of faith you took that paid off in the best way?
I think moving to LA was a huge leap of faith. I didn't really know anyone here. I had some friends from college. I didn't know anything about acting or working in film. I knew I wanted to live here, and once again, was not going to let anyone tell me no. And I was going to move here. And if I had to work at a restaurant and wash dishes, I was going to wash dishes and figure it out. This has been the most beautiful place I've ever lived. I love the weather here, obviously, but I met my husband here. He lived across the hall from me in my apartment building, and I've gotten to work on so many different productions and have different jobs that have made all of the dreams that I had when I was little come true. And there's so much more that I want to do. And I feel like being able to live here and being so close to other people that like want to create and have this beautiful like environment of that has been the biggest leap of faith for me. And also just like investing in myself and like knowing what I want to do and what's best for me, and kind of like figuring out how to do that in the best way to have a life that is worth living.
And there you have it, Christina Thomas, a true jack of all trades and a master of experience. I'm deeply grateful to Christina for sharing her time and insights as our very first guest on Heart to Hustle. Her journey from tackling career challenges to overcoming significant obstacles is nothing short of inspiring. We explored how she navigated diverse career paths, faced tough gaps in her resume, and turned those experiences into stepping stones for success. If you're drawn to stories that reveal the heart behind the hustle, be sure to tune in each week for more incredible journeys. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Layla Palmer, and I'm so glad you tuned in. It feels like we're wrapped up in an engaging conversation, uncovering the journeys of amazing individuals who inspire us. I'm excited to bring you more inspiring stories next time. Until then, thank you for listening.